Hello, welcome to Shelf Defiant. I am your disembodied narrator. These amazing books are brought to us by Project Gutenberg. We are only reading public domain in case that's not clear. I feel like I'm forgetting something. Okay, so last we left Jurgen speaking with the king about reputability. Reputability. Wow, I don't know why I added some extra emphasis there. All right, so let's dive into chapter 14, preliminary tactics of Duke Jurgen. So Jurgen abode at court and was tolerably content for a little while. He loved a princess, the fairest and most perfect of mortal women, and loved her, a circumstance to which he frequently recurred, as never any other man had loved in the world's history, and very shortly he was to stand by and see her married to another. Here was a situation to delight the chivalrous court of Glathian, for every requirement of romance was exactly fulfilled. Now the appearance of Guinevere, whom Jurgen loved with an entire heart, was this. She was of middling height, with a figure not yet wholly the figure of a woman. She had fine and very thick hair, and the color of it was the yellow of cornfloss. When Guinevere undid her hair, it was a marvel to Jurgen to note how snugly this hair descended about the small head and slender throat, and then broadened boldly and clothed her with a loose, soft foam of pallid gold. For Jurgen delighted in her hair, and with increasing intimacy loved to draw great strands of it back of his head. Seems like a weird sentence. Crossing them there and pressing soft handfuls of her perfumed hair against his cheeks as he kissed the princess. Again, this just seems really weird. The head of Guinevere, be it repeated, was small. You wondered at the proud, free tossing movements of that little head, which had to sustain the weight of so much hair. The face of Guinevere was colored tenderly and softly. It made the faces of other women seem the work of a sign painter, just splotched in anyhow. Gray eyes had Guinevere, veiled by incredibly long black lashes that curved incredibly. Her brows arched rather high above her eyes. That was almost a fault. Her nose was delicate and saucy. Her chin was impudence made flesh, and her mouth was a tiny and irresistible temptation. And so on and so on. But indeed, there is no sense at all in describing this lovely girl as though I were taking an inventory of my shop window, said Jurgen. Except that's exactly what you just did. Okay. Anagles are all very well, and they have the unanswerable sanction of custom. Nonetheless, when I proclaim that my adored mistress's hair reminds me of gold, I am quite consciously lying. It looks like yellow hair, and nothing else. Nor would I willingly venture within 10 feet of any woman whose head sprouted with wires of whatever metal. And to protest that her eyes are as gray and fathomless as the sea is very well also, and the sort of thing which seems expected of me. But imagine how horrific would be puddles of water slopping about in a lady's eye sockets. If we poets could actually behold the monsters we rhyme of, we would scream and run. Still, I rather like this Cervante. For he was making a Cervante in praise of Guinevere. It was the pleasant custom of Gogyrvan's court that every gentleman must compose verses in honor of the lady of whom he was hopelessly enamored, as well as that in these verses he should address the lady as one whose name was too sacred to mention. Otherwise, that did her sponsors. So Duke Jurgen of Logreus duly rhapsodized of his Philidia. I borrow from my dear love the appellation of that noted but by much inferior lady who was beloved by Ariphus of Belsize. Belsize, he explained. You will remember Polygar suspects she was a princess of the house of Sclerovius, and you of course recall Sanders' masterly summing up of the probabilities in his Herculia. All right, well, Sclerovius reminds me of sclerosis. It's not the same spelling, but that's what came to mind. Oh, yes, they said, and the courtiers of Gogyrvan Gawr like Mother said Ada, were greatly impressed by young Duke Jurgen's erudition. For Jurgen was Duke of Logreus nowadays, with his glittering shirt and the cornet upon his bridle to show for it. Awkwardly, this proved to be an earl's cornet, but incongruities are not always inexplicable. It was Earl Garamudi's horse. You have doubtless heard of Garamud. Garamud? I'm not sure how to say that, but to ask that is insulting. Oh, not at all. It is humor. We perfectly understand your humor, Duke Jurgen. And a very pretty fighter I found this famous Garamud as I traveled westward. And since he killed my steed in the heat of our conversation, I was compelled to take over his horse after I had given this poor Garamud proper interment. Oh, yes, a very pretty fighter, and I had heard much talk of him in Logres. He was Lord of Or and pursuant, you remember, though of course the estate came by his mother's side. Oh, yes, they said, you must not think that we of Glathion are quite shut out from the great world. We have heard of all these affairs, and we have also heard fine things of your duchy of Logres, monsieur. Doubtless, said Jurgen, and turned again to his singing. Lo, for I pray to thee, resistless love, he descanted, that thou today may cry unto my love, to Philidia, whom I, poor Logres, love so tenderly, not to deny me love. Asked why, say thou my drink and food is love, in days wherein I think and brood on love, and truly find not good in aught save love, since Philidia hath taught me how to love. Ugh. Oh my God, are we gonna wrap this up anytime soon, or are we gonna keep going with this for really much longer? I don't know how much longer I can handle this. Here, Jurgen groaned with nicely modulated ardor, and he continued, if she avow such constant hate of love as would ignore my great and constant love, plead thou no more. With listless lore of love, woo death resistlessly, love, in place of her that saith such scorn of love as lends to death the lure and grace I love. Thus Jurgen sang melodiously of his Philidia, and meant thereby, as everybody knew, the Princess Guinevere. Since custom compelled him to deal in analogies, analogs. Hold on, pause please. That's gonna drive me nuts. Yeah, read that aloud. Okay, well, that was super helpful. Thanks for that. Pause. I need to know how to say this word. Sorry.
Analog.
Yeah, analog is correct. That didn't look right. All right. Okay, deal in analogs. He dealt wholesale. Gems and metals, the blossoms of the field and garden, fires and wounds and sunrises and perfumes, an armory of lethal weapons, ice and a concourse of mythological deities were his starting point. Then the seasoned heavens were dredged of phenomena to be mentioned with disparagement in comparison with one or another feature of Duke Jurgen's Philidia. Zoology and history, and generally the remembered contents of his pawnshop, were overhauled and made to furnish targets for depreciation. Whereas in dealing with the famous ladies loved by earlier poets, Duke Jurgen was positively insulting. You don't say, allowing hardly a rag of merit. Still, he was careful to be just. I don't think you can say that if he's being positively insulting. And he allowed that these poor creatures might figure advantageously enough in eyes which had never beheld his Philidia. And to all this information the lady whom he hymned attended willingly. She is a princess, reflected Jurgen. She is quite beautiful. She is young, and whatever her father's opinion, she is reasonably intelligent, as women go. Nobody could ask more. Why then am I not out of my mind about her? Not out of my head about her. Already she permits a kiss or two when nobody is around, and presently she will permit more. And she thinks I am quite the cleverest person living. Come, Jurgen man, is there no heart in this spry young body you have regained? Come, let us have a little honest rapture and excitement over this promising situation. But somehow Jurgen could not manage it. He was interested in what he knew was going to happen. Yes, undoubtedly, he looked forward to more intimate converse with this beautiful young princess, but it was rather, as one anticipates, partaking of a favorite dessert. Jurgen felt that as a liaison arranged for in this spirit was neither one thing or the other. If only I could feel like a cold blooded villain now. I would at worst be classifiable. But I intend the girl no harm. I am honestly fond of her. I shall talk my best, broaden her ideas, and give her, I flatter myself, considerable pleasure. Vulgar prejudices apart, I shall leave her no whit the worse. Why, the dear little thing, not for the ransom of 7 emperors, would I do her any harm. And in these matters, discretion is everything, simply everything. No, quite decidedly, I am not a cold blooded villain, and I shall deal fairly with the princess. Well, I don't feel like you are, since she's betrothed or promised or whatever to someone else. I mean, I don't know. That doesn't seem right. Like, just step off, dude. Walk away. Thus, Jurgen was disappointed by his own emotions as he turned them from side to side and prodded them and shifted to a fresh viewpoint, only to find it no more favorable than the one relinquished. But he veiled the inadequacy of his emotions with very moving fervors. The tale does not record his conversations with Guinevere, for Jurgen now discoursed plain idiocy, as one purveys sweetmeats to a child in fond astonishment at the pet's appetite. And leisurely Jurgen advanced. There was no hurry with weeks wherein to accomplish everything. Meanwhile, this routine work had a familiar pleasantness. For the amateur coordinates matters, knowing that one thing axiomatically leads to another. There is no harm at all in respectful allusions to a love that comprehends its hopelessness. It was merely a fact when Jurgen mentioned and was about to pass on. Only Guinevere, in modesty, was forced to disparage her own attractions as an inadequate cause for so much misery. Common courtesy demanded that Jurgen enter upon a rebuttal. To emphasize one point in this, the orator was forced to take the hand of his audience. And I'm not sure if it's orator or orator. I'm not quite sure what the correct pronunciation. Well, let's just check it. I've only heard it as orator, but then someone recently said it's orator. I don't know if it's a potato situation.
Orator.
Orator. All right, so it's like aura. Okay, got it. Orator. But strangers did that every day, with nobody objecting. Moreover, the hand was here not so much seized as displayed by its detainer, as evidence of what he contended. How else was he to prove the Princess of Blathion had the loveliest hand in the world? It was not a matter he could request Guinevere to accept on hearsay, and Jurgen wanted to deal fairly with her. Well, but before relinquishing the loveliest hand in the world, a connoisseur will naturally kiss each fingertip. This is merely a tribute to perfection and has no personal application. Okay. Besides, a kiss, wherever deposited, as Jurgen pointed out, is, when you think of it, but a ceremonial of no intrinsic wrongfulness. Well, maybe the action isn't inherently wrongful or intrinsically wrongful. Your intent here is, though. The girl demurring against this apathogem, as custom again exacted, was still in common fairness convinced of her error. So now, says Jurgen presently, you see for yourself if anything changed between us. Do we not sit here just as we were before? Why, to be sure, a kiss is now attestedly a quite innocuous performance, with nothing very fearful about it one way or the other. It even has its pleasant side. Thus, there is no need to make a pother over kisses, or over an arm about you, when it is more comfortable sitting so. How can one reasonably deny to a sincere friend what is accorded to a cousin or an old cloak? It would be nonsense, as Jurgen demonstrated with a very apt citation from Nep- Nepscasis. No, Napscus. I just added the extra syllable in there. Napscus. Yeah, seems like he's trying to justify pretty hard. I was gonna look up another word. Where did it go? Oh, we're moving on. I don't know where I left it. Then, sitting so in the heat of conversation, the speaker naturally gesticulates, and a deal of his eloquence is dependent upon his hands. When anyone is talking, it is discourteous to interrupt, whereas to lay hold of a gentleman's hand outright, as Jurgen parenthesized, is a little forward. No, he really did not think it would be quite proper for Guinevere to hold his hand. Let us preserve decorum even in trifles. Ah, but you know that you're doing wrong. I doing wrong? I, who am simply sitting here and talking my poor best in an effort to entertain you. Come now, princess, but tell me what you mean. You should know very well what I mean. But I protest to you, I have not the least notion. How can I possibly know what you mean when you refuse to tell me what you mean? And since the princess declined to put it into words just what she meant, things stayed as they were for the while. Thus did Jurgen coordinate matters, knowing that one thing axiomatically leads to another, and in short, affairs sped very much as Jurgen had anticipated. Now, by ordinary, Jurgen talked with Guinevere in dimly lit places. He preferred this because then he was not bothered by that unaccountable shadow whose presence in sunlight put him out. Nobody ever seemed to notice this preposterous shadow. It was patent, indeed, that nobody could see it save Jurgen. Nonetheless, the thing worried him. So even from the first, he remembered Guinevere as a soft voice and a delectable perfume in twilight, as a beauty not clearly visioned. And Gogyrvan's people worried him. The hook-nosed tall old king had been by Jurgen dismissed from thought as an enigma not important enough to be worth the trouble of solving. Gogyrvan at once seemed to be schooling himself to patience under some private annoyance and to be resolved in his mind some private jest. He was queer and probably abominable, but to grant the old rascal his due, he was not meddlesome. The people about Gogyrvan, though, were perplexing. These men, who considered that all you possessed was loaned you to devote to the service of your God, your king, and every woman who crossed your path, could hardly be behaving rationally. To talk of serving God sounded as sonorously and as inspiritingly as a drum. Yes, and a drum had nothing but air in it. The priests said so and so. But did anybody believe the gallant Bishop of Marion, for example, was always to be depended upon? I would like the opinion of Prince Adwick's wife as to that, said Jurgen with a grin, for it was well known that all affairs between this dame Alandine and the bishop were so discreetly managed as to afford no reason for any scandal whatever. As for serving the king, there in plain view was Gogyrvan Gawr, for anyone who so selected to regard and grow enthusiastic over. Gogyrvan might be shrewd enough, but to Jurgen he suggested very little of the Lord's anointed. To the contrary, he reminded you of Jurgen's brother-in-law, the grocer, without being graced by the tradesman's friendly interest in customers. Gogyrvan Gawr was a person whom Jurgen simply could not imagine any intelligent deity selecting as steward. And finally, when it came to serving women, what sort of service did women most cordially appreciate? Jurgen had his answer pat enough, but it was an answer not suitable for utterance in a mixed company. No one of my honest opinions, in fact, is adapted to further my popularity in Glathian, because I am a monstrous clever fellow who does justice to things as they are. Therefore, I must remember always, in justice to myself, that I very probably hold traffic with madmen. Yet Rome was a fine town, and it was geese who saved it. These people might be right, and certainly I cannot go so far as to say they are wrong, but still, at the same time, yes, that is how I feel about it. Okay, well, Jurgen just seems like a bit of a jerk. Thus did Jurgen abide at the chivalrous court of Glathian and conform to all its customs. In the matter of love songs, nobody protested more movingly than the lady whom he loved, quite hopelessly, of course. Embodied all divine perfections, and when it came to knightly service, the possession of Caliburn made the dispatching of thieves and giants and dragons seem hardly sportsmanlike. Still, Jurgen fought a little now and then in order to conform to to the customs of Lothian, and the Duke of Logreus was widely praised as a very promising young knight. And all the while he fretted because he could just dimly perceive that ideal which was served in Lothian, and the beauty of this ideal, but could not possibly believe in it. Here was again a loveliness perceived in twilight, a beauty not clearly visioned. Yet am I not okay, yet am okay, the sentence is killing me. Yet am not I a monstrous clever fellow? He would console himself to take them all in so completely. It is a joke to which I think I do full justice. So you're going to vote among these persons to whom life was a high hearted journeying homeward. God the Father awaited you there, ready to punish at need, but eager to forgive after the manner of all fathers. That one became a little soiled in traveling and sometimes blundered into the wrong lane was a matter which fathers understood. Meanwhile, here was an ever present reminder of his perfection incarnated in women, the finest and the noblest of his creations. Thus was every woman a symbol to be honored magnanimously and reverently. So said they all. Why, but to be sure, assented Jurgen, and in support of his position, he very edifyingly quoted Aphelion and Fabianus, Pap- Papirius, and Sextius Niger to boot. Okay, well, thank God that's the end of chapter 14. That was a whole mess of what is he talking about? And please stop. All right, well, thanks for joining me and see you next time.